Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship. The USV Horizon was far from Earth, exploring the dark spaces between stars. Jake had been a space captain for 15 years, but he had never seen anything like what appeared on his screens. Today, the ship's computers were going crazy. Numbers flashed across the displays in patterns that made no sense. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Thompson sat at her station, her fingers flying over the controls. She was the best communications officer in the fleet, but even she looked confused. "Captain, we're getting something strange," Lisa said without looking up from her work. "It's a signal, but it's not like anything we've ever heard before." Jake walked over to her station. The screen showed waves of data flowing like water. The signal was weak, barely stronger than background noise. Most ships would have missed it completely. But the Horizon had the newest scanning equipment, and it caught everything. "How long has it been transmitting?" Jake asked. Lisa checked her readings. "That's the weird part, sir. Based on the signal decay, I think it's been broadcasting for hundreds of years. Maybe longer." Dr. Alan Carter, the ship's science officer, joined them at the communications station. He was a thin man with gray hair who had spent his whole life studying space phenomena. His eyes went wide when he saw the data. "This is impossible," he whispered. "The signal is too complex to be natural, but it's too old to be from any known civilization." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. In all his years of space exploration, he had learned to trust his instincts. Something about this signal felt important. It felt urgent. "Can you decode it?" he asked Lisa. She shook her head. "I've tried everything. It's not in any language database we have. The mathematical structure is completely alien." The bridge fell, silent except for the hum of the ship's engines. Jake stared at the flowing data on the screen. Somewhere out there, someone or something had been sending this message for centuries. They had been calling into the void, hoping someone would answer. "We're going to find the source," Jake decided. "Set course for the signal's origin." His crew looked at him with surprise. They were an exploration ship, not a rescue vessel. Their mission was to map new star systems, not chase mysterious signals. But Jake had made his decision. The Horizon changed course and headed toward the Kepler 442 system. The journey would take several days, giving the crew time to work on the signal. Lisa worked around the clock, trying different decoding methods. Dr. Carter studied the mathematical patterns, looking for clues about who might have sent them. On the third day, Lisa made a breakthrough. She had been approaching the signal all wrong. Instead of trying to decode it as language, she started treating it as pure mathematics. The patterns suddenly made sense. "Captain," she called out excitedly, "I think I know what this is." Jake hurried to her station. The screen now showed star charts, biological data, and what looked like a countdown timer. The information was crude but clear. This was a distress call. "They're asking for help," Lisa said. "Whoever sent this message, they're in trouble." "Doctor." Carter joined them, his face pale. "The countdown timer, Captain, it's been running for over 300 years. If my calculations are right, it's almost at zero." Jake felt his heart racing. 300 years. Someone had been calling for help for 300 years, and no one had answered. The thought made him angry and sad at the same time. "What else can you tell me about them?" he asked. Lisa pulled up more data. "They call themselves the Veltar. Their homeworld is dying. Something is draining the energy from their star. They've been sending this message to every part of the galaxy, hoping someone will come. And no one has," Dr. Carter added grimly. "The signal shows they've made contact with dozens of other civilizations. But they're still there, still calling for help." Jake looked at the star charts on the screen. The Veltar homeworld was far from any major shipping routes. It was in a part of space that most people never visited. No wonder their calls for help had gone unanswered for so long. How many of them are left? Jake asked. Lisa studied the data. The signal is getting weaker. Each year, I think their population is dropping fast. Maybe a few 100,000, down from billions. The bridge fell silent again. Jake thought about the Veltar, alone on their dying world, sending the same message over and over for centuries. They had watched their star fade. They had seen their population shrink. But they had never stopped hoping that someone would come. "We're not equipped for a rescue mission," his first officer, Commander Steve Walsh, said quietly. "The Horizon can carry maybe 10,000 people in an emergency. If there are hundreds of thousands of them, ... Jake nodded. Steve was right. The Horizon was an exploration ship, not a colony transport. They had limited supplies and no way to carry an entire alien population. But Jake knew he couldn't just ignore the signal. "We'll figure something out," he said. "No one should have to call for help for 300 years and get no answer." The crew looked at their captain with a mixture of admiration and worry. They all knew this decision would change everything. They were no longer just explorers. They were about to become humanity's first contact with a dying alien race. As the Horizon continued toward the Veltar homeworld, Jake stood at the bridge windows, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Veltar were still broadcasting their signal. They were still hoping. And for the first time in 3 centuries, help was finally coming. The signal grew stronger with each passing hour. Soon, Jake thought, they would meet the Veltar face to face. He only hoped they wouldn't be too late. The USV Horizon dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge, watching the main screen as their destination came into view. What he saw made his heart sink. The Veltar homeworld looked like a dying ember floating in space. The planet that had once been green and blue, according to the aliens' historical data, now appeared brown and gray. Clouds of dust swirled around it like a funeral shroud. But the most disturbing sight was the star itself. "My God," whispered Dr. Alan Carter, staring at the readings. "The star is being consumed." The Veltar sun flickered like a candle in the wind. Dark tendrils of something that wasn't quite matter wrapped around it, slowly draining away its light and energy. The star was maybe half the size it should have been, and it was still shrinking. "What is that thing?" asked Commander Steve Walsh. Pointing at the dark mass surrounding the star, Dr. Carter worked frantically at his console. "I'm reading massive gravitational distortions. It's like dark matter, but it's behaving in ways that shouldn't be possible. It's actually feeding on the star's energy." Lieutenant Commander Lisa Thompson was already working on communications. "Captain, I'm picking up their signal much stronger now. And there's something else. They know we're here. They're trying to talk to us." Jake felt a mixture of excitement and dread. After 300 years of calling into the void, the Veltar were finally getting an answer. But from what he could see of their world, it might be too late. "Put them through," Jake ordered. The main screen flickered, and suddenly Jake was looking at his first alien. The Veltar was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large, dark eyes. It wore simple robes and stood in what looked like a control room filled with ancient but well-maintained equipment. "We are the Veltar," the alien said in slow, careful English. "We have been waiting so long for someone to answer our call. I am Elder Zethai, keeper of the memory of our people." Jake stepped forward. "I'm Captain Jake Morrison of the human ship Horizon. We received your distress signal and came as quickly as we could." The alien's large eyes seemed to shine with tears. "Humans, we have not heard of you people before. You came even though we are strangers to you?" "That's what we do," Jake said simply. When someone calls for help, we answer. Elder Zethai was quiet for a long moment. Many others have heard our call over the centuries. The crystalline architects who build worlds from stardust. The energy beings of the spiral nebula who live in pure light. The machine minds of the core worlds who think faster than time itself. What did they tell you? Jake asked, though he already suspected the answer. They all said the same thing. They were sorry for our situation. They calculated the cost of helping us. They decided we were not worth saving. Elder Zethai's voice was calm, but Jake could hear the pain underneath. Our world is too far from trade routes. Our technology is too primitive. We have nothing to offer in return for rescue. Jake felt anger building in his chest. How many of you are left? Perhaps 300,000 spread across our world. Once we numbered in the billions, but the hunger has taken our star, and our world grows colder each year. Many have died from the cold and the failing harvests. Dr. Carter spoke up. Elder Zethai, can you tell us about this hunger? What is it exactly? The alien's expression grew darker. It is not natural. Dr. Carter, our scientists believe it is a weapon, created long ago in a war between peoples whose names are forgotten. It was designed to consume star systems, to deny them to enemies. We were simply unlucky enough to be in its path. A weapon, Jake repeated. You mean someone did this to you on purpose? Not to us specifically. We were just in the wrong place when the hunger arrived. It has been slowly eating our star for over 1,000 years. We have tried everything to stop it, but our technology is not advanced enough. Lisa was working at her station, gathering data from the planet's surface. Captain, I'm reading hundreds of settlements down there. They're all running low on power. Life support systems are failing in the outer colonies. Jake looked at the readings. The Vieltar were scattered across their world in small communities, each one struggling to survive as their planet grew colder. They had managed to keep their civilization together for 1,000 years while their world died around them, but they were running out of time. Elder Zethai, Jake said, we want to help you. But I have to be honest, our ship can only carry about 10,000 people. We can't evacuate your entire population. The alien nodded sadly. We know. We have always known that if help came, it would not be enough to save us all. But perhaps some of our people can survive. Perhaps our culture and knowledge can be preserved. What about the other civilizations you contacted? Commander Walsh asked. Surely some of them could help. If they worked together? Elder Zethai's expression was bitter. The crystalline architects said the energy cost was too high. The energy beings claimed our matter-based existence was incompatible with their realm. The machine minds calculated that our rescue would set a precedent they could not afford to follow. A precedent? Jake asked. If they saved us, they would have to save every other dying civilization that asked for help. They said the galaxy would become chaos if everyone expected rescue from stronger peoples. Jake felt sick. The most advanced civilizations in the galaxy had turned their backs on the Vieltar, not because they couldn't help, but because they were afraid of the consequences of helping. They had let fear and cold calculation override basic compassion. How long do you have? Dr. Carter asked. The hunger will consume what remains of our star within the next few months. After that, our world will freeze completely. We have perhaps a year before the last of us dies. Jake looked around his bridge. His crew was staring at him, waiting for his decision. He knew what he had to do, even if it seemed impossible. We're going to save you, he said. All of you. Elder. Zethai's eyes widened. Captain Morrison, with respect, you said your ship can only carry 10,000 people. We number in the hundreds of thousands. Then we'll find more ships, Jake said. We'll ask our people for help. Humans don't abandon others just because the math is hard. The alien stared at him for a long moment. You would do this? You would risk everything for a people you have never met? Jake smiled. Elder Zethai, you've been calling for help for 300 years. Someone should have answered a long time ago. We're here now, and we're not leaving without you. For the first time in the conversation, Elder Zethai smiled. It was a sad smile, but it held hope. Perhaps the universe is not as cold as we thought. It's not, Jake said. Trust me on that. Captain Jake Morrison sat in his quarters, staring at the communication screen. He had been making calls for 3 days straight, and the answers were always the same. The Terran Colonial Authority, the Mars Federation, the Outer Colony Alliance. Everyone had the same response to his request for help with the Vel-Tar rescue. The operation is not economically feasible, said Director Helen Barnes of the Colonial Authority. Her face on the screen looked tired and annoyed. Captain Morrison, we understand your humanitarian concerns, but we cannot commit resources to a rescue operation that far from our territory. These people have been calling for help for 300 years, Jake said, trying to keep his voice calm. They're going to die if we don't help them. That is unfortunate, but not our responsibility. Our duty is to our own colonies and citizens. We cannot justify the expense of relocating an entire alien population. Jake had heard the same words from every official he contacted. The math was simple, they said. The Vel-Tar were too far away, too numerous, and too alien to be worth the cost of rescue. The resources required could be better used elsewhere. He ended the call and put his head in his hands. How could he face Elder Zethai and tell him that? Humanity's government had made the same calculation as every other civilization, that they too had decided the Vel-Tar were not worth saving. A knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. Come in, he called. Chief Engineer Pete Collins entered, carrying a tablet full of data. Pete was a practical man who usually focused on engines and power systems, but he had been studying the Vel-Tar technical specifications that Elder Zethai had provided. Captain, you need to see this, Pete said, setting the tablet on Jake's desk. I've been looking at their technology, and it's not primitive at all. It's actually incredible. Jake looked at the data on the screen. What do you mean? They're fusion reactors, sir. They're achieving energy output ratios that our best engineers can only dream of. And look at this. Their agricultural systems can grow food in conditions that would kill our crops. Their medical techniques can treat diseases that we've never figured out how to cure. Pete flipped through more pages of data. The Vel-Tar aren't backward, Captain. They're just different. They focused on efficiency and sustainability instead of raw power. They've kept their civilization running for 1,000 years while the world was dying. That takes incredible skill. Jake felt a spark of hope. What are you saying, Pete? I'm saying these people have knowledge and skills that could benefit humanity tremendously. They're not just refugees we'd be helping. They're potential partners who could teach us things we never imagined. But Pete's discovery went deeper than technology. As Jake studied the Vel-Tar's history, he saw something that impressed him even more than their engineering skills. For 3 centuries, while their world slowly died, they had never given up hope. They had never stopped trying to contact other civilizations. They had never abandoned their weakest members or split into competing factions. They've got something else, Jake said to Pete. They've got the kind of determination that built human civilization. They don't quit, no matter how bad things get. Pete nodded. Maybe that's why the other civilizations didn't help them. The Vel-Tar are too much like us. Jake made a decision. If the government wouldn't help, he would go around them. He called Lieutenant Commander Lisa Thompson to his quarters. Lisa, I need you to do something that might get us all in trouble, he said. I want you to broadcast the Veltar story throughout human space. Not through official channels. Send it directly to colonies, traders, independent ships, anyone who will listen. Lisa looked worried. Captain, that's against regulations. We're supposed to go through proper channels for all communications. The proper channels have failed, Jake said. The Veltar are going to die while bureaucrats argue about budgets. Maybe ordinary people will care more than politicians do. Lisa was quiet for a moment, then nodded. What do you want me to say? Tell them the truth. Tell them about a people who have been calling for help for 300 years while their world dies. Tell them that every advanced civilization in the galaxy turned their backs on them. Tell them that humanity has a chance to be different. Lisa worked through the night, crafting a message that would bypass government censors and reach ordinary people throughout human space. She attached Elder Zethai's recordings, the star charts showing the Veltar's dying world, and the mathematical proof of their 3-century-long distress call. The message went out on civilian communication networks, through trader frequencies, and via personal communications between colony worlds. Lisa made sure it reached cargo haulers, passenger ships, mining operations, and farming colonies. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within hours, Jake's communication board was lighting up with incoming messages. Captain Maria Santos of the cargo hauler Freedom's Call was the first to respond. Captain Morrison, we're 2 days out from the Veltar system. We can carry about 5,000 people if we dump our cargo and reconfigure our holds. More messages followed. The passenger liner New Horizon offered to take 10,000 refugees. The mining ship Deep Digger could carry 3,000 if they worked fast. Independent traders, colony ships, even converted military vessels began reporting their willingness to help. Jake couldn't believe what he was seeing. In less than a day, ordinary humans had volunteered more ships than the government had been willing to consider. These weren't officials calculating costs and benefits. These were people who had heard about the Veltar situation and decided to help. Commander Steve Walsh came to Jake's quarters with a worried expression. Captain, we're getting calls from Colonial Authority headquarters. They're not happy about Lisa's broadcast. I don't care, Jake said. Look at these responses, Steve. We've got over 100 ships volunteering to help. The government said it was impossible, but regular people are making it happen. Steve looked at the list of volunteer ships. Most of these aren't designed for passenger transport. They're cargo haulers, mining vessels, research ships. Can they really carry refugees safely? They'll figure it out, Jake said. Humans are good at that. The official response came within 6 hours. Admiral Catherine Foster, Jake's direct superior, appeared on his communication screen looking stern and frustrated. Captain Morrison, you have created a massive headache for everyone involved. We have over 200 civilian ships heading for an unknown star system based on your unauthorized broadcast. The Colonial Authority is scrambling to coordinate what has become the largest civilian mobilization in human history. Jake prepared himself for a reprimand, but Admiral Foster surprised him. I'm being assigned to coordinate this operation, she said. Officially, the government is calling it a humanitarian response mission. Unofficially, you've forced their hand. They can't look like they're less compassionate than civilian volunteers. Does that mean we have official support now? Jake asked. It means you have official chaos, Foster replied. But yes, we're going to help the Veltar. God help us all. We're going to try to evacuate an entire alien civilization using a fleet of cargo ships and volunteers. Jake felt a surge of pride in his species. When the governments and bureaucrats had calculated that the Veltar weren't worth saving, ordinary humans had looked at the same situation and reached the opposite conclusion. They had seen people in need and decided to help, regardless of the cost or difficulty. Admiral, Jake said. "I think we can do this. I hope you're right, Captain. Because if we fail, we'll have given false hope to a dying people. And that might be worse than if we had never come at all." But Jake wasn't worried about failure. He had seen what humans could do when they set their minds to helping others. The Veltar had called for help for 300 years, and finally, the right people had answered. Admiral Catherine Foster stood on the bridge of the command ship, looking at the strangest fleet ever assembled in human history. 237 vessels floated in space around the Veltar homeworld, and no two were alike. Military escorts flew alongside garbage haulers. Luxury cruise ships docked with mining vessels. Colony transports shared space with converted research stations. "Admiral, this is madness," said Colonel James Park, her military advisor. "Half these ships weren't designed to carry passengers. The other half don't have the life support systems. For alien refugees, we're going to get people killed." Foster watched the organized chaos on her tactical display. Civilian captains were ignoring military formation protocols and arranging themselves based on cargo capacity and passenger space. It should have been a disaster, but somehow it was working. "Colonel, we're about to attempt something that's never been done before," she said. "We're going to evacuate an entire alien civilization using whatever ships we can get. Military doctrine doesn't cover this situation." The logistical challenges were enormous. The Veltar couldn't breathe human atmosphere without protective suits. They needed specific minerals in their food that had to be synthesized. Their body temperature was lower than humans, requiring special heating systems. Most critically, they needed to be evacuated quickly, as their star was entering its final collapse phase. Dr. Alan Carter had worked with Veltar scientists to develop solutions. Instead of trying to modify every ship for Veltar passengers, they would create portable habitat modules that could be installed in cargo holds and passenger areas. Each module would maintain proper atmosphere, temperature, and life support for about 50 Veltar. "The habitat modules are brilliant," reported Chief Engineer Pete Collins. "The Veltar designed them to be simple and efficient. We can manufacture them using materials from the mining ships and install them in any vessel with enough space." The plan was radical. Instead of evacuating the entire Veltar population to one location, they would spread them throughout human space. Small groups would be hosted by different colonies, research stations, and even civilian families until permanent homes could be established. Captain Jake Morrison coordinated with Elder Zethai to organize the evacuation. The Veltar had prepared for this moment for decades, maintaining detailed records of their population and organizing themselves into groups based on family relationships and professional skills. "We have divided our people into units of approximately 50 individuals," Elder Zethai explained. "Each unit contains families, skilled workers, and cultural keepers. This way, our traditions and knowledge will survive even if we are scattered across the galaxy." The evacuation began with the most vulnerable populations. Children, elderly, and sick Veltar were loaded onto the ships with the best medical facilities. The passenger liner New Horizon took 3,000 refugees, converting its entertainment areas into medical bays and nurseries. Captain Maria Santos of the cargo hauler Freedom's Call had dumped her entire load of rare metals to make room for Veltar refugees. "These metals will still be here next year," she told her crew. "These people won't." The mining ship Deep Digger faced unique challenges. Its crew was used to dealing with harsh environments and dangerous situations, but they had never carried civilian passengers. Chief Mining Officer Bob Turner worked with his team to create safe passages through the ship's industrial areas. "We've got families with children coming aboard," Turner told his miners. "I want every sharp edge covered, every dangerous chemical locked away, and every piece of heavy equipment secured. These people have suffered enough. As the evacuation continued, something unexpected happened. The Veltar refugees began helping with the operation. Their engineers worked alongside human technicians to improve the habitat modules. Their medical specialists assisted human doctors in treating both species. Their mathematicians helped optimize the ship loading procedures. They're not just passengers, observed Commander Steve Walsh. They're partners in their own rescue. The cooperation went both directions. Human children aboard the family ships were fascinated by Veltar mathematics and art. Veltar healers shared their medical knowledge with human doctors. Scientists from both species worked together to solve problems that neither could have handled alone. The rescue operation faced constant challenges. 3 ships suffered mechanical failures that required emergency repairs. The habitat modules on 2 vessels malfunctioned, forcing emergency transfers of refugees. A solar flare damaged communication systems, leaving part of the fleet operating blind for 6 hours. Each crisis was met with human ingenuity and Veltar determination. When the cargo ship Mountain Mover lost its main power systems, the Veltar engineers aboard redesigned the backup systems to work at higher efficiency. When the research vessel Deep Thought ran out of synthesized food for its Veltar passengers, the ship's botanists worked with Veltar agricultural specialists to convert the ship's hydroponic gardens to grow compatible food. "I've never seen anything like this," Admiral Foster told Captain Morrison. "Every problem that comes up, humans and Veltar solve it together. It's like they were meant to work as a team." The most difficult moment came when the Veltar star began its final collapse. The dark energy weapon that had been consuming it for centuries suddenly accelerated its feeding. The star started shrinking rapidly, and the planet's surface temperature dropped 10 degrees in a single day. "We need to speed up the evacuation," Dr. Carter reported. "The planet's going to become uninhabitable within weeks, not months." Admiral Foster made a tough decision. All ships, this is command, were switching to emergency evacuation protocols. Maximum capacity, minimum comfort. We get every Veltar off that planet, even if we have to stack them like cargo. The Veltar response surprised everyone. Elder Zifai contacted every ship in the fleet personally. "Humans of the rescue fleet, you have already done more for us than we dared hope. We will endure any hardship to escape our dying world. Pack us tightly. If you must, we have survived worse conditions for centuries." The final phase of the evacuation was a race against time. Ships loaded refugees beyond their design capacity. Cargo holds were filled with habitat modules packed with Veltar families. Passenger areas were converted into dormitories housing hundreds of people. The cruise ship Star Wanderer took on 12,000 Veltar refugees, 4 times its normal passenger capacity. Captain Linda Chun worked with her staff to create shift schedules that let everyone have access to food, rest, and recreation areas. "We're not just transporters," she told her crew. "We're their temporary home. Make sure they feel welcome." The last transport lifted off from the Veltar homeworld just 18 hours before their star finally collapsed. The dark energy weapon, having consumed all available stellar material, dissipated into space. The planet that had been home to the Veltar for millennia became a frozen rock orbiting a dead star. Admiral Foster watched the final transport dock with her command ship. "Status report," she called. "All ships reporting successful evacuation," came the response. "Total Veltar refugees, 312,437 individuals. 0 casualties during transport." Foster felt a cold surge of pride. Humanity had done something incredible. They had saved an entire civilization using nothing but determination, creativity, and the willingness to help strangers. The galaxy's most advanced species had calculated that the Veltar rescue was impossible, but humans had proven them wrong. "Set course for human space," she ordered. "Let's take our new friends home." As the massive rescue fleet began its journey back to human territory, Foster reflected on what they had accomplished. The Veltar were no longer a dying race calling desperately into the void. They were partners in humanity's greatest adventure, and their story was just beginning. 2 years after the Great Rescue, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of the new space station orbiting New Veltar. The planet below was green and blue, with white clouds swirling around continents that were beginning to show signs of cities and farmland. It was hard to believe that just 2 years ago, the entire Veltar species had been dying on a frozen world. "It's beautiful," said Elder Zephi, joining Jake at the viewing window. The old Veltar looked healthier than he had during their first meeting. His blue skin had a healthy glow, and his large eyes were bright with hope instead of despair. "Your people did most of the work," Jake replied. "We just gave you a place to start over." Elder Zephi shook his head. "We could not have done this alone. The agricultural techniques your farmers taught us, the construction methods your engineers shared, the medical knowledge your doctors provided, all of this made our new world possible." Jake smiled. The integration of Veltar refugees into human society had been challenging, but the results were amazing. Instead of being absorbed and forgotten, the Veltar had found ways to contribute to every human community that hosted them. On the mining colony of Titan Base, Veltar engineers had improved the extraction systems by 30%. Their methods were so efficient that other mining operations throughout human space were adopting Veltar techniques. The miners who had initially worried about housing alien refugees now considered them essential partners. Dr. Sarah Kim, head of the Mars Medical Research Center, had written extensively about Veltar healing methods. "Their understanding of cellular regeneration is centuries ahead of ours," she reported. "Working with Veltar healers, we've developed treatments for diseases that were previously incurable. But the most remarkable changes were happening in human society itself. The Great Rescue had shown humanity what they could accomplish when they worked together toward a common goal." Admiral Catherine Foster had been promoted to head the new Emergency Response Fleet, a permanent organization dedicated to humanitarian missions throughout human space. "The Veltar rescue changed us," Foster explained to a gathering of colonial governors. "We learned that we could do impossible things when we decided to act from conscience instead of calculation." The civilian fleet that had spontaneously assembled for the rescue had evolved into something unprecedented. The Volunteer Response Network now included over 1,000 ships and stations, all ready to mobilize for humanitarian missions. When the agricultural colony of Green Valley was hit by a devastating plague, the network delivered medical supplies and personnel within days. When the mining station Deep Rock suffered a catastrophic accident, volunteer ships evacuated the survivors and provided temporary housing. "We've become the galaxy's emergency responders," said Captain Maria Santos, whose cargo hauler Freedom's Call had become the flagship of the volunteer fleet. "People throughout human space know that if they're in trouble, help is coming." The success of the rescue operation had not gone unnoticed by the galactic community. The same civilizations that had deemed the Veltar not worth saving now sent diplomatic missions to study how humanity had accomplished the impossible. The crystalline architects, who built worlds from stardust, arrived in magnificent ships that looked like living crystals. Their ambassador, a being of pure geometric beauty, met with human officials on the neutral station of Crossroads. "We have observed your rescue of the Veltar with great interest," the architect said, its voice like music made of mathematics. "We calculated that such an operation was impossible. Yet you succeeded. We would like to understand how." Similar delegations arrived from the energy beings of the Spiral Nebula and the machine minds of the core worlds. Each had the same question. How had humanity managed to save an entire civilization when more advanced species had failed? The answer, Jake realized, was simple. Humans didn't calculate the cost of doing what was right. They saw people in need and acted to help them. Regardless of the difficulties involved, Dr. Alan Carter had become something of a celebrity in scientific circles. His research into the dark energy weapon that had consumed the Veltar star had revealed dozens of similar weapons scattered throughout the galaxy. Working with Veltar scientists, human researchers had developed countermeasures that could neutralize these ancient weapons. The Veltar lived with one of these weapons for 1,000 years, Carter explained to the Galactic Science Council. They understand them better than anyone else in the galaxy. Combined with human engineering, we can now protect other worlds from suffering the same fate. The Weapon Neutralization Project became a joint human Veltar effort that attracted attention from across the galaxy. Civilizations that had previously ignored both species now sought their help in protecting their own star systems from ancient threats. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Thompson, now promoted to captain, commanded the new diplomatic Vessel Harmony. Her mission was to respond to requests for help from civilizations facing similar crises. The ship's crew was half human, half Veltar, demonstrating the partnership that had grown from the rescue operation. We're getting calls for help every week now, Lisa reported to Admiral Foster. The Kree Empire wants our help with a failing star. The Silicon Collective is asking for assistance with a plague affecting their computer networks. Everyone wants to hire the team that saved the Veltar. But the most significant change was happening on New Veltar itself. The planet had become more than just a new home for a refugee population. It was a symbol of what could be accomplished. When different species worked together, human families had chosen to relocate to New Veltar, drawn by the unique culture that was developing there. Veltar artists worked with human musicians to create new forms of expression. Scientists from both species collaborated on research projects that neither could have completed alone. Children grew up learning both human and Veltar languages, creating a generation that truly belonged to both cultures. This is what the future looks like, said Governor Rachel White, the human administrator of New Veltar. Not humans expanding alone into the galaxy, but humans and our partners building something better together. The planet's capital city, built where the first refugee camp had been established, was a marvel of integrated architecture. Human engineering supported Veltar artistic vision, creating buildings that were both functional and beautiful. The city's central plaza featured a monument to the rescue fleet, not a statue or building, but a living garden that showed plants from both Earth and the original Veltar homeworld growing together. Elder Isai had lived to see his people not just survive, but thrive. Now ancient even by Veltar standards, he spent his time teaching young humans in Veltar about the history of both species. His classes were always full, with students eager to learn about the time when an entire civilization had called for help across the darkness of space. The humans who answered our call were not the most advanced people in the galaxy, he would tell his students. They were not the richest or the most powerful, but they were the ones who remembered what it meant to be alive. Captain Jake Morrison, now Admiral Morrison and head of the Rescue Operations Command, often visited New Veltar to see how the refugees had adapted to their new home. What he found always amazed him. The Veltar had not just survived their transplantation, they had flourished, becoming integral parts of human society while maintaining their own unique culture. The success had attracted refugees from other species as well. The Zephyrians, whose homeworld had been destroyed by a supernova, found sanctuary in human space. The Kristen, fleeing a civil war that had torn their civilization apart, were welcomed into human colonies. Each new group brought their own knowledge and skills, making human civilization stronger and more diverse. We've become something new, Jake reflected as he walked through the mixed neighborhoods of New Veltar's capital. We're not just humans. Anymore, we're humans in Veltar and everyone else who chose to join us. We're the people who don't abandon each other. The transformation went deeper than politics or economics. The rescue of the Veltar had shown humanity something fundamental about themselves. They were the species that answered distress calls, no matter how old or how distant. They were the people who couldn't calculate their way out of helping others. Admiral Foster stood before the United Colonial Assembly, delivering her annual report on the emergency response fleet. 2 years ago, we saved 300,000 Veltar refugees, she said. But they saved us too. They showed us who we really are. The statistics were impressive. The response fleet had conducted 47 major humanitarian missions in the past year. They had evacuated colonies threatened by natural disasters, delivered medical supplies to plague-stricken worlds, and provided emergency aid to hundreds of thousands of people across dozens of species. But the real measure of success was harder to quantify. It was in the mixed crews serving aboard rescue ships. It was in the children playing together in the parks of New Veltar. It was in the fact that when someone called for help anywhere in human space, they knew with certainty that help would come. The galaxy had taken notice. The great powers that had once calculated the Veltar rescue as impossible now studied human methods with something approaching awe. Some began to